of our Global Restaurant Investment Forum. We're delighted to have you back here. And first of all, I think we should all express our sincere thanks to Elmer and Patrick at Jazz Hospitality for hosting us last night at Kubara. Wasn't that incredible? Actually, Puri, if you can extend our thanks as well, because I know you kindly introduced us to Patrick and Elmar, so thank you very much. Right, so yesterday we had, I thought it was a fantastic start to this conference with our interview with Pierre Gagné, and then we had the overview by Deloitte. We moved on to a talk with Don Sweeney and Nick Clayton, a hard talk around the world in 60 minutes. UK new concepts and trends, and that last session in the afternoon on new concepts that are coming into the marketplace around the world. Today we're in for a treat as well. You've got all the details in your program, but at the end of today, or around 3 o'clock this afternoon, I'm going to be jumping out of a plane. So I'm not too sure what's worth being on the stage here or jumping out of the plane, but that's going to be an interesting experience. So now we've got our first session with Duncan Fraser-Smith, Managing Director of the Cutting Agency. And Duncan, maybe you can just come up and just explain your session this morning. Yeah, what are you going to be talking about?
What we're doing, well, we've got a very exciting session this morning, Jonathan, because we've got, I think, probably one of the most esteemed panels that we've had so far at this event. And we're going to look at what, from an investor perspective, which obviously is the key market that we've got here today, where should you put your funds? Where should you invest your money? Should it be in a celebrity chef or a chef-driven restaurant? Should it be in a brand and a restaurateur? Or should it be in your own concept, something that you're going to develop with someone else as a partner? So we have a fascinating panel, and I look forward to bringing them up in a minute.
Well, thank you, Duncan.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, our guest panelists up onto stage. The first gentleman here is the Senior Vice President of Food and Beverage and R&B for the Jumeirah Group. Has an extensive history, obviously working in hotels throughout Asia, Middle East, and the United States. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Gert Capera. Absolutely, my pleasure, buddy. Nice to see you. Let me give you space to get in there. Our second panelist is, almost world-renowned. He has obviously had a fantastic experience developing food and beverage for Raffles Hotels, Rosewood Hotels and Resorts, Ritz-Carlton in Hawaii, and is now currently the Chief Executive of Nira Hotels and Resorts. Please welcome MPS Puri. Welcome. Pleasure. Our third panelist today almost doesn't need any introduction in Dubai. She has established a very strong name for herself in the development of Middle Eastern cuisine in this area, and is about to open several new exciting restaurants in this region, and specifically here in Dubai. A celebrity chef in her own right, ladies and gentlemen, Chef Sylvana Rome.
Should we move a little back?
Welcome, my dear. And finally, a gentleman who, once again, really doesn't need any introduction in this realm. A man who worked for the Oberoi Group and is now the executive chef, chief executive officer of the Cinnamon Club in London. Ladies and gentlemen, Vivek Singh. Welcome, my friend. Your microphone's dropped, by the way. That's okay. We're going to keep it pretty informal here today, I think. It's the kind of the best way to go. So it's an exciting topic, ladies and gentlemen, today. We've got, obviously, this is one that I think the key investors in the room are here to get an understanding of and to get a bit of more insight as to where should they invest, where should they put their money and grow their business if they want to get into the restaurant industry. I mean, we're sitting here today talking about restaurateurs, we're talking about celebrity chefs, and we're talking about brands that have been developed over several years. And I think maybe if we dive back a little bit and say, where did it all come from? How did we get to where we are now? Maybe, Puri, if you can give us a little bit of an insight from your perspective, obviously, your years of experience in the industry. How did we get to this place?
Yeah, being the sort of senior citizen in this group, as you can clearly see, I thought I'd provide a little bit of a historical perspective. I think if you go back to really taking a look at the 60s, the 70s, and so on, where we had restaurants were in hotels, in the palace hotels in cities like London and in Paris. It was at the Ritz in Paris or the Savoy in London. That's where the Ritz in London, that was the seat of the restaurants, the high-end restaurants. And this is also where, it was the Escoffier-style food, large menus. We also had the carriage trade that traveled, and they went to these restaurants, and the local affluence, and these were special occasion restaurants. So most of the time you ate at home, and when you were not eating at home, you went to one of these restaurants. I think it was large, and if you take a look at what was happening in the back, we had large kitchen brigades. The kitchens were split up in all the different disciplines: saucier, poissonnier, entremetier, garde-manger, and so on. We had complicated menus, huge menus in restaurants, and the menus were also split up the same way. Degustation menus of imperial foods. I'm sure some of you might remember lots of guéridon service in the restaurant, flambé going on, crêpes Suzette, cherries Jubilee.
The audience is too young, I think.
Oh, sorry. If I've lost you, I'm sorry. And then came, obviously, along with that, after that came the advent of casual or fast food, and people started to, like we were talking about this earlier, and Get mentioned, people started moving into cities, so smaller homes, different lifestyle, and as a result, dining sort of moved out into the restaurants. It was no longer the seat of the palace restaurants only, palace hotels only. We started having a lot more independent restaurants. And that's when we ended up with hotels now starting to have coffee shops, all-day dining, but still there was no real design elements, no real specialty chefs. We would have one executive chef that was in charge of anything and everything. And then the next advent came specialty restaurants. Now all of a sudden, where the only haute cuisine was French cuisine, we started to see in Italian restaurants and Chinese restaurants and Japanese restaurants and so on. And from there were some companies, particularly in hospitality, in hotels, that took the lead, like Hyatt. And if you went to the Hyatt Food and Beverage Conference, which they had in the early 80s, we'd be talking about sandwiches and trying to talk about how to be able to do beautiful garnishes on plates and so on. And that then took us further, where we started to see some creativity on the part of these hotel chefs that, if traditionally, just as a small example, if traditionally fajitas were done with skirt, the guy thought, I'm going to be a bit more creative. I'm going to use a fillet instead of a skirt steak to do a fajita. So that was kind of the innovation. That then further led us later into restaurant designers, kitchen designers, renowned chefs, renowned maitre d's, and now as we move forward, that's where we are today with celebrity chefs, restaurateurs, mixologists, a lot more emphasis on food and beverage marketing, and this is all because of a more sophisticated consumer, great ingredients, more educated staff, lots of choice on the restaurant scene, ethnic cuisines becoming much more mainstream. Today sushi is no longer Japanese. Sushi is like pizza. It's a global comfort food. And now we're getting even more creative. Ramen burgers, a croissant married to a donut called a cronut. So all this is evolving. So just a small historical perspective.
Absolutely, and I think that's fantastic. I think one of the key points to pick up out of that, though, is there's a period of time where F&B was purely emotion-driven. It was driven by the GM, it was driven by the executive chef to agree to the owner as well. Where do you think we obviously for the investors in the room, did we move apart? Maybe Gert, you can answer this one, from the emotion-driven process into the more financial, what's my ROI going to be in this business?
I think initially a lot of restaurants were born out of necessity. It was a guest house. It was you offered your home to others, you invited others, you charged for it, and you made a living for yourself, for your family, and for the generations to come. Eventually, people realized that A, there's good cash flow in restaurants and bars, and B, there's good money to be made. So financing was brought in, financiers and investors came to the table, and they saw a good return in a restaurant business, and hence the financial pressure came into play.
Chef Silvana, from your perspective, obviously you're the emotive part of the business. You're the one that produces the image and the food and the delivery. What do you look for in an investor in order to create that balance?
Well, as a chef and as a partner, I mean, first of all, as a chef, I'm a partner as well. So I think it's very different when you're a salaried chef and when you're a chef partner. So basically, I'm such a big part of the equation, and what I look in an investor and a partner is not just the money. You see, it's not. Sorry, can you believe that? They did not give me a microphone. They thought I was that loud, So I'll start again, basically. So what I was saying is that as a chef partner, which is very different to a salaried chef, I look, it's like a marriage, basically, and it's a long term. And also what is very important for a restaurant to work, it's an ownership. So when an investor is looking for a celebrity chef, it's not just the status and the name. Yes, I like TV. Yes, I'm good at it. But the most important thing is that I'm damn good in the kitchen, and I'm always there. I'm not one of those chefs that when service stars go and have dinner elsewhere. And I'm there to greet and meet everybody. And it's an experience. And with celebrity chefs, people want the whole experience. It's no longer offering just food on the table. It's about an experience. And it's what makes my restaurant different is going to be exactly that experience. And this was indeed the case in the success of Queen's in the Mayfair in London, because people came for the food and for the chef as well. So it's a balance, and it's about ownership. Now, in Dubai, and I will be very honest with you, investors, the hardest thing is to actually engage your staff, because people are very transient here. As you know, this is a tax-free territory. People come and go. So the hardest thing is to actually make people follow you. And as a celebrity chef, you need to be someone who engage people, who give them ownership, who passes, who make them feel like they can actually eat from your passion. It just goes into them. And because there are jobs everywhere, they can hop from one job to another very easily. So, and the most important thing is to say that if you are looking to invest in this region, basically find someone who is prepared to stay here, not just come and go once in a blue moon, because it just doesn't work, and we've seen it, and I'm not going to mention names. So it is about what you put in, you get in what you put in there.
Very good. Vivek, from your perspective, obviously your name came through your innate ability in the kitchen and what you can produce. Now, the Cinnamon Club doesn't really have, I mean, everyone knows that the Cinnamon Club is you, but you're kind of not putting yourself forward from that perspective. How does that work from an investor that goes, well, I want to invest in Vivek Singh, but he's not putting his name anywhere?
But that's right. I mean, you see, there are celebrity chefs and there are celebrity restaurants. And I think, and that, whether you want to call it a celebrity restaurant or a brand, I think, I was more interested in building a brand, something that defines redefined expectations, something that set new parameters in place, set the benchmark up a notch or 2 or 5, for that matter, 12 years ago. So the idea was to do something so different and something that has an ethos, something that has the soul, the concept. I mean, every restaurant or every brand has concepts, and the concept can be hardware, the music, the light, the vibe, the scene, which is very easy to copy. Or there is the software to the concept. And the software is the ethos, whether it's seasonality, innovation, creativity, how you treat your people. And it's when these two come together, that's when magic happens.
Yeah.
I mean, 13 years now, this year we'll be celebrating 13 years of Cinnamon Club. Going on from Cinnamon Club to Cinnamon Kitchen and to Cinnamon Soho over the last 13 years. I started off Cinnamon Club with 10 chefs, and really pleased that 6 of us are still in the business. They've all kind of grown up and, gone on and been with us 10 years. 10 years is the average, and a senior chef stays with me. So and that equity that you build in the brand is the ethos that they grow up believing that this is the kind of food we're doing. We're actually doing something that's going to change the world, or is changing the way people look at Indian food. I think that aspiration has got to be something more than just a name above the door.
Yeah. Yep, no,
And
very
that's
good,
where.
very good point. I think, and on your point, obviously the grooming of the team that you have that's working with you. One of the points we were discussing just briefly before was the fact that, the real celebrity chefs like Sylvano, we were talking before about Paul Bocuse, we were talking before about Alain Lenotre, they do the hard yards. They do the work in the kitchen. And
They
it's,
actually cook.
They cook. They're the ones behind the stoves and the pans and actually doing the work. Are we in a situation now where we're over promoting in the kitchens too early on to really allow that breadth of, renowned chef to come forward? Are they kind of missing steps along the way, Puri, maybe?
Yeah, I think they are, but it's also probably become less, I dare say, become less relevant, because I think what people are now willing to buy is a brand. So you'll hire. I really don't want to be politically incorrect and take any names, but
You can say Noodle House.
No, but we all know about celebrity chefs that have as part of their contract to come and visit 2 times a year.
Not cook.
That's right.
To come and visit 2 times a year.
Well, it's getting worse actually, and I'm not going to mention the name. I just want to jump in very quickly here. I read a celebrity chef who's opened a restaurant in India, a big one from London, who's saying, "I Skype my chefs."
I mean, this is completely crazy.
So I think from
people
a
are-
restaurant investment point of view, I think one's got to be really clear whether they are buying the name on the door, or are they buying something more tangible, something more significant. And whether it's the ethos, whether it's the seasonality, what is it that is being bought? Is it the hardware, or just the name on the door, or the software?
See, I think that's a great point, because is the name on the door the most important thing in the success of a business? When we're talking about chef-driven operations, I mean, Gert and I were having this discussion the other day. You look at, there are probably 4 different ways that you can view a chef-driven operation. The first one is, we use the Capitol Grill as an example in the US, but that's brand-driven, but the food, the quality of the food, what is being produced there, but it is the chefs that deliver that. Cut by Wolfgang Puck is a brand plus chef result. Indigo here at Grosvenor House by Vineet Bhatia is a chef plus brand result. And then you've got people like Gordon Ramsay, who it's chef, 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 chef. The name is there. So where, out of those kind of 4 balances, do you think the future of the chef operation is going to head? Or is it a hybrid of the 2? Gert, maybe.
I think it really depends what you, the audience, want to buy. If you have a location and you want to put emphasis on your location, you want to get press, you want to get media attention, then a chef, the 4th category, a celebrity chef, who may, as Silvana says, visit you once a year or Skype, gives you the name on the door, and that may give you what you're looking for, but be careful what you buy. The other extreme is, as Duncan mentioned, is something like the Capitol Grill, or of course the Noodle House, where you get a complete package, and you don't get a chef, you don't get a chef's name, you get a restaurant concept that's created that you can either manage with your team, or in other occasions, like with us, you could have the operator, you could choose the operator as well. So it's a managed franchise. And in between, you have the hardcore celebrity chefs that will operate your restaurant, that will bring their brigade with it, or you have what Vivek represents here, a brand that comes complete in a package and is backed up by a chef, and you will manage the proposition.
That's right. I mean, when you talk about the brand, then we talk about what do chefs feel and what do investors feel. the one thing we cannot take for granted is we cannot assume the paying public not to have any sense. When somebody's got 60 restaurants or franchises or whatever they're called, all around the world, and their name above the door, I think every paying punter really understands. They're not expecting to, to bump into them and shake their hands as far as a celebrity chef goes.
Ever.
Right? I mean, you can only do that much. So, it's a brand that really works. What you really buy when you buy a brand is that you buy 10, 12, 14, whatever number of years that's been perfected, has been tinkered. There's a specialty skill set. You have an expectation, understanding of what you can expect, what levels of service, what levels of standards. I think all that is far more valuable than a celebrity chef name on the door.
Well, I just also want to say something here because things are changing in Dubai. Things are changing in a big way in the UAE, in the sense that used to be a culture where you will find a brand and you will uproot it and just say, I like what you have in New York, I want to bring it to Dubai. Or I love what you have in London, I want to bring it in Dubai. But things are changing because I'm here. I have actually left my beloved restaurant in Mayfair to be here because the picture is just so much more exciting. And my particular expertise, I specialize in modern Middle Eastern food, so I'm at the home of food, of course. But what is happening is that there is a big drive towards locally grown brands, something in mind with the locality, with the local audience. Just like what Vivek said, people here may have money, or it seems so on the overall, that's between whatever we decide to think about it. The bottom line is that people have sense as well. So you need to create something that is applicable, that actually makes sense. And just to give you an example, I'm one of the very few, in fact, I probably am the one, I haven't opened yet, of course, but I have done a lot of work around local ingredients and organic, and there is a lot to be had. And I know that there will be some disagreement in the panel if we start talking about it, but there is a lot of things to be addressed in regard to the locality. So what I'm saying is that to think of a brand, if you want to invest money, find the chef, find the brand, but something perhaps that you have, I'm going to use the word balls, to create rather than actually do something that already exists in the West, bring it here. Because out of all those amazing concepts from the West, only very few strive here. Most of them are kind of puddling along, really not doing that greatly. Again, no names mentioned. So I think that there is a lot to be said about creating a local brand. And my intention is to create my brand, make it real strong. And I already have some actually ripples over in America. So I'm actually looking on the market in New York. There is something happening there as well to actually bring the brand created here over there. So actually I have every intention of reversing that trend and that culture.
Fantastic. Puri, do you agree with that process? Do you agree with the fact that in order for a chef-driven brand to be successful, a chef 100% has to be involved in the day-to-day operation of the business?
Really depends on the food.
Okay.
You mentioned Capital Grill earlier. I think you can perfect the process as long as you buy the right beef and you've got the right kitchen equipment and you've got a handful of talented people that know how to be able to execute that, maybe less relevant. Depends on, and then if you take another cuisine, which is a lot more intensive, you do need the skill set. We've all seen sushi bars or tempura restaurants or Chinese restaurants where the actual people that are running that restaurant may have not even ever traveled to Japan or ever traveled to China, and yet they're entrusted with the responsibility of doing that. It becomes a bit more difficult for them. So it really depends on the kind of food. The other thing that I wanted to mention here is there's a distinct difference between emerging markets and established mature markets. Dealing with a mature market and customers or guests that understand the nuances of that kind of food and are used to dining in a certain style is completely different from an emerging market. In an emerging market, you can sell a brand and you not have the right ingredients or the right people executing, it won't matter. It's the same person that buys a Louis Vuitton bag for the sake of owning a Louis Vuitton bag. So it's a completely different consumer, so you need to be need to sort of keep that in mind also.
Absolutely.
So can I just ask you, do you think this market is emerging market or established market,
Oh, it's
the UAE?
still an emerging market.
Yeah, because this is an interesting, and your opinion matters to me more than most people, simply because you've been in the business for so long, you have such amazing pedigree, but many people will tell you that this is fairly established market, which I also don't agree with.
No, I think we'd probably all agree that this is still an emerging market here from a food and beverage perspective. But that brings me actually into the next.
That brings a lot of opportunities.
It does bring a lot of opportunities for people to invest. And on that point, the restaurateur, because we've been talking a lot about the chef, the restaurateur here it seems to be an area that is, once again, it's evolving in this particular market. But when you're looking to invest, and we might talk to the people that have done their businesses here, is the restaurateur more important than the chef, Vivek?
In terms of setting up a
From
brand?
an investment perspective?
Well, I think, you know, if it's a case of a celebrity restaurateur or a chef, it all boils down to the same thing. I think if it's, as long as it's person-led or personality-led, then you can only have that person in one place at one point in time or whatever. But if it's a much more developed brand, then I think you're buying into into a slightly larger gamut. So I think, you know, if it's not personal, you know, and we talked about celebrity chefs. We haven't talked about celebrity restaurateurs here. I mean, Russell Norman is setting the world on fire as far as London and the UK goes. And there are so many, you know, more and more, most famous known restaurants in London, Wolseley, for example, the Deloney, by Jeremy and Chris
King
Corbin.
and Corbin.
You know, these are celebrity restaurateurs. And they're doing what they're doing. So there's no difference between being a celebrity chef or a celebrity restaurant. I think it's got to go beyond the remit of personality. And that's what the brand.
I want to say something because I have a bit of experience, especially over the last year, with 7 proposals. I want to say that winning formula is celebrity chef stroke restaurateur with a very strong financial partner who is fairly silent but profusely good at business, because we chefs are known not to be very good at business. So this is the winning formula. So as a chef, I have to say that celebrity chef on its own, name above the door is not enough. But this is the winning combination, very much in my opinion.
Absolutely. Good. You were going to...
No, I was listening very carefully, and now I fully agree, because the celebrity chef, the name above the door is fine if the chef has 1, 2, 3 units. If that person has units spread around the world, then the name above the door buys you something else. So the restaurateur makes his or her name by creating a concept, developing a concept, developing a chef or a team of chefs that run that concept, and that's much easier to multiply and doesn't have the drawback of the name above the door. If the name above the door says Silvana Rowe, then I may want to see her if I'm a new patron especially.
The good thing about Dubai is that it's small, very small Dubai, so you can travel very easily between all the 3 restaurants that I'm going to open, that's for sure. So you're going to be seeing me.
Puri, do you agree? I mean, one of the people that I've always looked up to in this industry is Danny Meyer.
Absolutely.
I read Setting the Table once a year. It's kind of as a reference book and a guide. And you look at the Union Square Cafe, and I mean, Danny Meyer is Danny Meyer. You don't see Danny Meyer on any of his businesses at all. Correct.
No, Danny's a restaurateur. He's the absolute ultimate restaurateur, but he's got the innate ability to be able to identify the right location, to be able to put together a fabulous team, and to be able to deliver an excellent product. Going from Shake Shack to 11 Madison Park, which are all part of Danny Meyer's portfolio. But then you also have the ability, you also have people like, for example, Alan Yao. Is Alan Yao a restaurateur or is he a chef? Alan Yao, what he's done with what he did with Wagamama, and then Busaba, and then with Hakkasan and Yawacha, and what he's doing again now, he's got the perfect sort of balance. Absolutely. So I think restaurateurs, one of the most incredible restaurateurs, the late Jean-Claude Vrina of Taiwan in Paris, you know, he was a restaurateur. Nobody ever knew who was the chef at Taiwan. They had 3 Michelin stars, and it didn't really matter because it was Jean-Claude that ran the show.
Yeah, very true. Savannah?
I just want to say those concepts are very rare, very rare. I mean, I can actually count the successful restaurateurs in two hands, basically, around, especially UK and America, because for so many successful restaurateurs, there's that thousands and thousands more unsuccessful. Because you see, with restaurants, people think it's easy, people think it's a hobby. They like it to have something on the side. But like Vivek and me were saying earlier about Corbin and King, you know, 2 of the most successful. Even they had one restaurant that did not do very well, but you know, they recovered, they went on. So it happens to everyone. But like look at Zuma. Zuma is another great success. Nobody knows ever who cooks in there. And I know because 3-4 years ago, I talked to Zuma before I opened Queen's, actually 4 years ago, and they said, we don't want a name. We don't want anybody who is famous. You know, I had an investor here in this country who was offering me an amazing site, and he said, we don't want your name above the door. And I said, you know, I don't mind so much that I am somebody who has a personality, who is out there. So it's finding this right balance and letting somebody do what they're good at, what they're best at, and then that's how it's going to work.
So I'm going to throw this to all of you then, because I think this kind of ties this in from an investment perspective once again, is location, consideration. Obviously, it's fine to invest in a brand or into a restaurant or into a chef. How important is the location? Secondly, once you say, yes, I'm going to invest, I'm going to spend X amount per square foot on my fit out, I'm going to spend X amount per square foot on my rent, my chef is going to cost me X amount, my restaurateur or my brand is going to cost me X amount. How much then do I need to invest in my software, into my staffing? Because I think there seems to sometimes be a disparity from investors when it comes to doing restaurants, especially restaurants here, in that we spend a lot of money on the fit out, we spend a lot of money on the place looking great, we buy the brand, we pay the royalties, we pay the chef, and then we absolutely cut out the key deliverables. That's my opinion. Does anyone have anything else that they'd like to add?
I couldn't help but smile when Silvina was saying the perfect formula is a great celebrity chef, a fantastic restaurateur, an investor with deep pockets and doesn't care about anything. And it is a fantastic recipe. You can't beat that. And I was thinking about it myself and thinking, I had none of those things. Just not enough money to set up the restaurant, undercapitalized. For years, he hadn't a clue of how to run business. Me just being, as a chef, slogging away at the stoves thinking, oh yeah, as long as you do good food, it's going to pay off and it's all going to work. Very quickly, you realize that creative and commercial success have to go hand in hand. One does not survive without the other. So, this whole conversation about deliverables, if we're doing it after one has spent the money, after one has put in the team, thought about the brand, and then saying, oh, whether it works or not, I think it's too late in the day.
Yep.
This really needs to be done at the drawing board levels, when expectations of what's going in and what kind of return to be expected. But anything, if it's returning less than 10, 12, 15%, I think it's just not a worthwhile, investment to get into in the first place.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just want to say it is expensive here, and location matters a lot, because I was offered, a lot, different locations, and I went for the best. I'm set in the belly button of Dubai, in the middle of the world, in the center of now, as they describe it here. And this is one of the most prominent locations. Then the other ones are just as good as. So, and these are not the best, they are amongst the best. There are others that are very good as well. But also, want to address, because we are now in the UAE, investors are interested, obviously, in investing in this region. There is the issue of alcohol. We discussed various other things. Now, a lot of people think, and I'm the first to try and prove it, that a restaurant, there's a lot of restaurants that are not having alcohol and are doing very well. They're not just celebrity driven, a lot, because, come on, where the locals are eating. There are a lot of places that people go and have amazing food without the alcohol. I don't suspect any of you are interested in a restaurant without an alcohol, but all I'm saying is that this is a very much growing trend here as well, because of the politics of this region. We list certain areas will exist the way they exist. If you look at the boulevard, Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, there is a lot of great places that are opening now. And if any of you have any questions in particular, I'm very happy to answer them later on, because I have a strategy on that. But I have been accused and pointing the finger, how is she going to do a restaurant? Because my main restaurant actually will not have an alcohol license. And I'm very much up and taking the challenge, but it will have all the most amazing, alluring elements of a restaurant together with the most incredible, mind-blowing design reflecting the locality and then the food as well, because there are two things people in this region like to do. It's shop and eat. So those things will be very much covered in my restaurant. I'm only mentioning that as a very generous piece of information on my behalf to tell you what I believe that people here want. So hopefully next year when we see each other, we'll come and eat at Omnia by Silvana and make up your own mind.
Excellent. Gert, from your perspective?
Ooh, there was too much information, so
He's still processing, he's still processing.
That's why we're here. We're here to give
We're
what
here to give
we know.
information, that's
input
correct.
is slow. No, what I would like to say to investors, if I could catch their ear for 10 seconds, have a bit of passion. You drive the business. It is your business, but join in. It's not your business and our business. It's really our business. Have a bit of passion. Consider that the curve is not necessarily linear. You need to reinvest in year 2 and 3. You need, what Duncan said is very true, consider the software. A beautiful, shiny, brand new, well Puccini designed restaurant would not live without a heart. It would live for a very short while, and people simply won't come back. And then you did not necessarily get your money's worth.
I was having a discussion with someone that wants to do a restaurant in the Caribbean, and it's an ethnic restaurant. And I said to him, there's 3 things that are important. One, make sure that the kitchen has all the equipment that it requires in order to be able to deliver that kind of food, because otherwise ain't gonna work. The second thing is make sure that we can buy the right ingredients to be able to cook the right food. And number 3, make sure that we've got enough visas to be able to bring the right people that can cook the food.
Very good point.
I'm not going to teach a guy in the Caribbean how to make that food. He doesn't know. He never tasted it in his life. If you don't have the right kitchen equipment, you don't have the right ingredients, and you don't have the right crew to be able to cook the food, you'll never get the food. It's impossible. So I think the software is hugely important in the front and the back, and you can create magic if you've got the right people. And the design is, it's like building a hotel. There's the soul of a restaurant comes from the people that run the restaurant. The rest of it is just the body, a nice body. But if there's no soul, there's no success.
Very true. I think that kind of sums everything up very nicely to a point. What I'd like to do is I'd like to open up to the floor if there are any questions for any of our panelists. We have one over here for us to
Strong voice.
give them an opportunity to...
One of the things that you haven't touched on, and Gert is probably the prime person for that, what about the non-celebrity chef, non-branded restaurant that you actually do yourself? Because it's another option for any investor to create your own restaurant, to save this 10% of revenue or $1 million upfront that we heard yesterday. So what are your thoughts on the advantage from investment point of doing it in-house without third-party entities? And Jumeirah is a great example for that.
I absolutely love the question, and I fully concur, because this is what we do. And we do a healthy mix of both, I would say. When you say you saved the 10%, you saved the upfront investment, that's not quite correct, because when you develop your own concept, you need to pay for the development of your concept. You may need Duncan to do your conceptual design, and eventually you need support to hire the right people. So creating your own concept for a one-off is not a cheap venture. It's not. You may be better advised to buy a brand or to hire a celebrity chef. But if you have the intention of going further than one location, creating your own brand is very viable. Yes, absolutely. And that's where the fun is. When I said investors, have some passion, have some love, that's where you can show that passion and love, and your marketing skills and your investment skills in taking that brand further.
Excellent.
Hi, I used to work with Raymond Blanc and run his series of restaurants, and one of the things that he did very, very well was he selected excellent head chefs for a number of different restaurants, and he was a celebrity, but all of the head chefs wanted to cook his food and then work with him on menu development. So it's actually a way of not just having one restaurant, but a whole network of restaurants. I wondered whether that's a way of doing it.
I will tell you what I'm doing, for example, because I'm opening 3, so obviously I cannot be in all 3. It is the most important thing we keep stressing here is this soul, is this passion. So I actually am bringing some people that worked with me. They're coming from London with me. And you know, this is a lot more money than actually having local chefs. Because here, the fees for a chef, like the salaries for a chef, are very much based on where the chef comes from. This is the reason Gordon Ramsay is so successful, because he also grew within. And as a chef, I would absolutely recommend, do not look what happens in Dubai, and you must know that what happens in Dubai is a lot of poaching going on. You know, chefs, 1 minute are with you, next minute somebody else offered them more money. So a classic example, Le Petit Maison and Le Serre. Chef from Le Petit Maison went to Le Serre. Le Serre is identical. It's like a clone to, more or less, to Le Petit Maison. So you see, as a chef, I am not one to actually condone the lack of imagination, repetition, and basically copying. At least there is a certain element of compliment in it. It's not the way we want to go forward. So I would say that the best way is to grow people within, to nurture, to look after them. Commies are very important to me, because commies very soon become somebody else. And here, in this world, most people below CDP are not looked after very well. The moment you start nurturing them, the moment you start looking after them, making them part of your family, is the moment they will stay with you and they will be true to you. And this is very much how I work. It's my family.
Vivek, you wanted to?
No, I agree with that. I mean, and I agree with that approach as well, because you can have one brand, but you have several head chefs, and they all, because they've imbibed that ethos and they've kind of grown with the system. And it's much easier, I mean, poaching or no poaching, but it's much easier to train somebody from within to kind of rise than to get somebody from outside and try to introduce them to the whole thing. And this is what my experience has been with doing 1 restaurant, 2 restaurants, and 3 restaurants. It's just that it creates that upward suction that just pulls everything together. As they say, a rising tide, you know, makes all the boats go higher. So that's what it is.
Absolutely.
We are just about to do with Tortuga, Mexican Kitchen and Bar. We have one phenomenal chef, and we clone him.
Perfect recipe. Perfect recipe. There's a lady down at the back here, yes?
Question for you.
Thank you. Sorry, my voice is bad. Something I think that you guys really missed is the people that, you know, restaurant guests are in direct contact with, and that's the waitresses and waiters. And unfortunately, I would have to probably say that maybe I would talk about Dubai and maybe a little bit around the region. People always forget investing in these people, because they invest in, just like you said, the decor, the chefs, all of the other things, but they actually forget these people that are the ones that you are directly in contact with. If I come and I have the most amazing food, the most beautiful atmosphere, ambiance, the music is amazing, but the person that gave me the food just did this, I will never go back to that restaurant. You know, and unfortunately, there's this, I don't know if it's the salaries or the type of training or that we are lacking in this region for people to come out and maybe work in this industry when they are, you know, maybe acting this way or that manner.
Yeah, I think, and I'll throw it out. I think what maybe was our jargon we talk about when we refer to software within the business, we're actually referring to the human resource element and the fact that it is absolutely crucial to invest.
That's exactly what I meant when I mentioned the software side of it. Yep. Because, you know, for a restaurant like Cinnamon Club, we employed 60 people 10 years ago, 28 different nationalities, 27 nationalities in the front of house, and 1 nationality in the kitchen at the time. You know, it was just Indian boys and girls running it. It just tells you how complex it can be, and without getting that bit right, you can just never go anywhere. So it is a part of that.
But I also want to state that actually it's a lot harder to get good front of house staff here. Service in Dubai suffers tremendously more than kitchen. Any restaurant given, you will have this problem. And for me as a chef restaurateur, it's extremely hard. So if you know somebody, please let me know. I'm looking for a really good, amazing, charismatic, passionate, somebody who can make it their own, somebody who can be an extension of me. I had an amazing woman in London, in Queens, and it's easier to find someone there. And it's not for the money or for the love, it's just impossible. But I just want to say it's very, very hard. With waiters and with front of house, I find it a lot harder. But we will have to do it because it's very important. It's how you greet and how you send off people. So I fully agree. It's a very valid point. Thank you for bringing it up.
There's an old saying by the famous American president, Teddy Roosevelt, the taste of the roast depends on the handshake of the host. So historically, when you went into a restaurant and you were greeted well, everything else seemed to go rather well. It's a debate that we've all been going on with for a very long time, because if you take a look at some of the mature markets, a waiter was a profession, still remains a profession, and they're very proud to be waiters. They're proud to be a head waiter. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to successfully carry that through, and so today, service is not necessarily considered a profession the same way it used to be. And it becomes sort of a backup job. You see yourself through college doing that, or you're an aspiring waiter, an aspiring actor. And so I still remember this story. Some of you might know Siria Maccioni from Le Cirque in New York. So he goes up to this waiter at Le Cirque and he says, "Hey, why don't you take care of that table?" He says, "Mr. Maccioni, but I'm an actor." He says, "Well, I pay you to be a waiter. Why don't you act like a fucking waiter?" So, there's this whole thing about people not necessarily taking that as a profession. So, but we need to do a better job.
Very true. We've got time for one more question if there is one. Yes, over here.
Hello. Everyone is looking for the ideal investor who has passion for food and definitely the money and so on. But from the investor point of view, what is the ideal time frame required to do return on investment for a successful concept? And my concern also that all the celebrity chefs, they have passion for food and they come to Dubai, they want a prime location and so on. But having a celebrity chef will accelerate the return on investment. And does he need a prime location if he's a celebrity chef?
Good question. Let's talk about ROI, I guess, just briefly. Does someone want to touch on what do you think is a realistic time frame? So is that correct you were looking at? Of course.
It depends on the concept and the investment. But for an investor, everyone will look into the return on investment. If he wants to spend $10 million on a fit out and he wants to get a celebrity chef and the highest payroll when it comes to the best service, how is he going to make money?
If you're looking for a return of investment on net operating profit, that's one thing. If you look for a return of investment with an exit strategy, that's a totally different strategy. If you would say you want to invest into a brand, you create a very, very successful business like Alan Yao did, and then sell it, then it's a very different model. So there's no short answer to what is the return of investment, really.
No, but from his perspective, if he's an investor that wants to invest in the right location, and then to be able to bring in a celebrity chef, and then to be able to have all the bells and whistles that it requires to be able to deliver that, yes, you can still expect, it may not be double digit, but you can still expect a return on investment. And in today's markets, to be able to get a 6, 7, 8% return is a respectable return.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, to talk about location, even the biggest brands, why does Louis Vuitton and Cartier and Tiffany and Gucci and Pucci need to be on Bond Street? Why don't they move to somewhere in Fulham and open their store?
Exactly.
It doesn't work.
Exactly.
Same principle.
Where your market is.
The location is important and will always remain important. and then to be able to deliver that product, fortunately, you're able to get the price for it. So it's all, it's all a matter of expense versus what you earn.
And I just want to say something quickly as a celebrity chef. You need your celebrity chef to be at the venue there. Do not do these deals. In my opinion, they just don't work. Because, and I'm not just saying that because I'm here. I happen to love it here anyway. But it's like, for me, because you see, I'm from that region anyway, more or less. So for me, culturally, I'm not that far removed. But location, I fully agree, it's very important because it makes life that much easier and you're that much ahead of everything. With staff, it's very important to remember that maybe bring 2 or 3 key people, but the rest of the people I employ from here. I am lucky to be long enough here to do quite a lot of work, to get to know the market well, to get to know people. And once people get to know you well, they want to follow you. But there are a number of restaurateurs and chefs that bring all their stuff from United States, for example, which is extraordinarily expensive. And this is not something I'll suggest. There is plenty of very skilled, good chefs here.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Jonathan?
Duncan, you've been asking all the questions. You're advising a lot of clients. What's your view on celebrity chef or your own concept?
A lot of the clients that I'm dealing with are multi-unit investors. So the key thing for me is always the master plan when you're looking at doing multiple ventures in multiple spaces. I think that there's definitely a space for the right mix. And once again, we've kind of touched today a little bit on the branded elements and the celebrity chef-driven models. I do think the homegrown concepts are very key in the market over here. And I think the success of those homegrown concepts is going to come, and I use Whistle and Marcus Thesleff as a restaurateur and Oku as a great example. It's going to come from people that have been successful restaurateurs in another part of the world or successful chefs in another part of the world that are coming here that want to then take I guess the beautiful raw ingredients that we have here in nature and in ambience, in design and in food and produce and create something exciting out of that. So there's definitely a mix around it, but once again, you know, it's our job, it's my job to steer people in the right direction to make sure that we've got longevity in the businesses going forward. We stop the replication, which I mentioned yesterday, which is taking something that's already been done and just ripping it and redoing it again. And we come up with really good creative investments in, I mean, bring a celebrity chef to Dubai, that's fantastic, but go get them to replicate what they've done in New York. Get them to come up with something that is homegrown and value added from here.
Something a bit different. Okay, well, Duncan, if I can express my thanks and our thanks to you and a wonderful panel. It was a fascinating session.
Well done, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.